And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Teri Lynge Kehl, UFO contactee and experiencer, certified UFO field investigator, International UFO Bureau executive director, and former Mufon board of director. Teri, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, Teri. And let's start from the beginning. And that is, how did you become interested in UFOs in the first place?
Well, that's a loaded question because I was never interested in UFOs at all. I always believed that they were comic book entertainment for the foolish. And I wouldn't have picked up a UFO comic book to save my life. I was a very strong Christian girl when I was younger, raising my two boys. And I had been working at Honeywell Aerospace as a secretary. And we got laid off after the Minuteman program. And I was waiting to be rehired. So I took a nighttime job. And this is in the early 70s. And I was waiting. And sometimes you can wait years actually to come back, so that didn't bother me that this was not till 1979 that this happened, but it was like 1973 when I left Honeywell. And I just was coming home from work one night, and I was working a night shift so that my husband could watch the children, at night, and I would watch the children in the daytime. We had two sons. And as I was coming home, I had left work about 2, and at about 2:15, it took me about 15 minutes to get home. I was coming home and I turned into the neighborhood area, and there was a railroad track on 28th Street North in St. Petersburg, Florida. And as I was approaching it to make a left into my neighborhood, I noticed something on the track. And I thought to myself, oh, there's a train out at this hour, because trains are really loud. So, if you live in that neighborhood, if they come or go. And I don't ever remember hearing a train at that early time of, the night. And so I'm looking at it as I get closer to it, and I can tell this is not a train at all. There are no wheels holding this thing down, but something was clearly hovered over the railroad track. And where the two gates come in, and fold down, it was right between there. I went back later and measured, it was 42 feet. And so this thing was 42 feet wide. And remember, I'm the biggest skeptic on the planet, not a believer. And as I looked at this thing, I was shocked. I kept saying to myself, no way, this cannot be happening. That can't be a what? Could that be a UFO? I mean, it's clearly not square. It doesn't have wheels. It's hovered over the railroad track. And as I'm driving towards it, shockingly staring at this thing, I see this blue light going along the center of it. And back in 1979, we did not have fiber optics. And so I couldn't identify this beautiful, glowing and moving blue light that was pulsating around the center of this craft, which just had a tiny little bump on the top of it. And everything in me kept going, what? This cannot be. So in pure disbelief, being a Christian, I said to the Lord, nothing can happen to me that you don't allow. What is that? And I said, it can't be. And just as I was thinking all that, my car shut off and just kept rolling up to it. And I had my hands on the wheels and big-eyed, and I was 27 years old at the time and all alone. And I'm looking around, there's not another car in sight. I'm absolutely freaked out. And I said, when the car stopped, oh, great. Never had any trouble with this little Honda Civic before. Now the thing's dead. I can't even believe my car just died. And so all these things are going around in my mind. And when all that happens at once, it puts you into such a conundrum. You cannot make sense of things. And it puts you in a place of just almost shock. But I wasn't totally shocked. This thing, as I'm staring at it, it was so beautiful. You know, my car comes to the stop. I'm looking at it. It's a silvery, pewterish kind of color. It has no doors, no windows, not even a rivet. You couldn't see anything. It just was this beautiful, smooth surface. And I was getting caught up in just looking at it. And I don't know how long I was staring at this craft. But as I started thinking to myself, Teri, whatever you do, don't get out of the car, stay in the car. And just about the time I thought that, my hand reached down and opened the door. And I thought, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the next thing I remember, because I do not recall getting out of the car, I don't remember standing up. The next thing I remembered, however, was having my hands on the door jamb. And I was white knuckling that thing going, oh my God, that thing is beautiful, but it can't be real. And so I was having this internal fight with myself. And it was like, I couldn't make sense of it. It was there and I didn't believe in it. And I said to the Lord, how can this be? And he said, there's so much you do not understand. I heard that very clearly. And I thought, well, yeah, sure. I'm sure there's plenty I don't understand. But this, I mean, come on, you know? And so the next thing I remembered, and I remember this very clearly, was standing in front of the Honda Civic now, looking right at this craft hovered and watching that blue light. It was so mesmerizing. It was absolutely beautiful blue. I'd never seen anything like that. And I thought to myself, wait, how did I get here? When did I step away from the door jamb? And when did I get here? And so, okay, didn't compute, couldn't figure it out. And it was, again, very concerning. But oddly enough, it was like the craft was actually calming me, which did not make any sense, none whatsoever. And so as I'm staring at this thing, and I don't know how long I stood there just staring, because trust me, it was otherworldly. It was beautiful. It was not making not even one sound. There was nothing moving around me. There were palm trees on either side. There was a big open field to the right. And I knew that because I'd lived there for like 12 years. So I knew that that was there. It was just short of Morris Street off of 28th Street North in St. Petersburg. So even to this day, that open field is still there. That runs along that railroad track. But all of a sudden, this huge light comes from the right side of me. And I'm like, what? And I looked down. And I was standing a good 2 feet off the ground, and I couldn't wrap my head around that. That really was a shocker. And I remember thinking, could anything be more weird about this day? You know, could anything be more strange about what's going on here? And I thought, how could I possibly not be standing on the pavement? How can I not be on the street? You know, come on, you know, and so when your mind can't figure out to make sense of something, it puts you in such a weird place. And I don't even know how to explain that place, but it's so other, so bizarre that all you can do is stand in it and be in this weird place of what's happening, you know, how could this be happening? And I looked over to this big blue light now, and I saw something coming out of the blue, and it was very tall, and it was very, very ugly. And as I looked over to it, I went, oh my God, I am not looking at that. I am not going to look at that. I am not giving that thing my attention. It was so ugly. It was this tall, thin, ultra thin, white figure. Now, I didn't know they were called really aliens. I knew that there was comic book things about it, and I thought that was all just nonsense. And like I said earlier, I really thought it was comic book nonsense. So all this nonsense is now a reality in my eyesight. My green eyes are looking at this thing, and I'm like, what? And I wouldn't look back up at it. I got this first glance, very long extended arms, which were so gross, and a big, huge head. I didn't see a mouth. I didn't see ears. I didn't see a nose. I saw big eyes. And these eyes were so ugly on this weird head. And the thinness of the whole being itself didn't even look like it could be there. It looked like, if you've ever put your thumb on a torch, you can see right straight through it, through the light, And this thing, I could see right straight through it. I did not see a bone structure. I just saw this being, and I'm like, how is it being held together? How is it standing up? How is this thing, what is this thing? You've got to be kidding me. If I said that once, I said it 1,000 times that night. You've got to be kidding me, and remember, I'm standing there talking to the Lord. And so this is bizarre. And so as I'm looking at this thing and looking away from it and trying to deal with what I'm looking at, my body starts moving in that direction. And I'm like, what? How am I moving? Because I had never heard of anything like that. But I was being controlled and manipulated somehow. And believe me, I could not register that in my mind. And the closer I got to that thing, which was now in my left, first it was in my right view, now it's in my left view. I got up right towards it, and the ugliness of this thing scared me so bad, I lost it. I passed out. The next thing that I remember was going into a craft that had already landed over there. I didn't even see that thing until I was just looking over there and I saw something. And I'm assuming I saw that craft because there was all blue light and, I couldn't make anything make sense about it. I was definitely horrified in the moment. I wake up in this white glowy room and I open my eyes and I just somehow or other came to, I was literally laying down. And I remember lifting my head up and looking, and I could see that I was wearing my uniform for work. And I had on these little beige sandals. And I thought, oh, good, I can get up, I can run, And then I focused on these two smaller beings. And I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that? And I'm like, oh my God, they were equally ugly, but completely different ugly than the tall white thing that I saw. And I thought, oh my God. And the one thing was coming up towards my left side from like the back of this white room. And it had these long fingers. It looked like there were 3 of them, and it was going to touch that left ankle. And I was like, oh no. And then I thought to myself, where's that ugly white thing? And the minute I said that, he was right there. And I looked up into these dark eyes that almost were like a chasm. It was more than frightening. And I thought, oh my God, what is that? I clearly saw no nose, no mouth, no ears, no hair, just this white, big-headed thing with these eyes. And they weren't like some people have said, did they go like this? No, they were more like this, but they were at kind of an angle that way. And I'd never heard of this before this moment, but I was experiencing for the first time in my life mental telepathy. It looked right at me. And when I looked at it, it spoke without a mouth and said, "We will not harm you. We will not take you." And for some reason, don't ask me why I even said this, because it doesn't make any sense to me. I went, "Take me? Take me where?" I'm like, "What? You got to be kidding me. Where would you take me?" And I just thought it's so bizarre. And even to this day, I wondered, what the heck did I even say that for? But I was furious. I just went into some like defensive, furious mode. And the next thing I know, I'm totally out. And let me just tell you about the room. The room, back in 1979, we didn't have soft white glow light bulbs. We had these yellowish kind of light bulbs, and anytime you turned them on, you kind of get a little yellowish glow and amberish, And so this room, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and everything in it, and there was it was almost like a suck down thing. Everything was like one piece. There was no separation of pieces or anything. Everything was just like one big, huge piece. And I was laying on this table, it was hard, but it was this white glowy thing. And there was white glowy coming from the ceiling. And I did make a mental note while I was looking at everything. Wow, everything is a light in here. And so there weren't like extra lights, in the room. The room was lit by the light. And so the next thing I remembered was being back in front of my Honda Civic. And now this one that's going like this, but I had had a life change somehow, don't know how. I had had a life-changing experience in that craft, that other craft. And now I literally said out loud, "Don't leave me. Please don't leave me here. I don't want to stay here. Take me with you. Take me with you. Don't leave me here." And I said to myself, "Teri, shut up. What are you saying?" And again, it was like I was having this kind of a internal struggle. And one side of me was begging to go, not to be left behind. And the other side was disciplining me and saying, "What are you saying? You've got 2 babies at home that you love. What are you talking about? You want to go? You don't want to go anywhere. You don't even know where you're going." And it didn't make any sense whatsoever. And because I didn't know about mental telepathy, I didn't know that's how he spoke to me. And because I didn't know about all this other stuff that was happening with the levitation and all of this being controlled and moved and everything, I didn't understand it. And as I was standing in front of this thing, I felt it communicating with me. And I know that sounds crazy. How do you communicate with a ship? But trust me when I tell you, this thing was almost like it was biologically alive and talking to me and calming me down. But I couldn't stop begging them to take me. And at one point, standing there, because I don't know how long I stood there and did this, I couldn't figure anything out. Nothing made sense. I couldn't depend on my faculties like I would in any normal situation. It was just so bizarre. And so I kept doing it. I kept crying. I kept saying, "Please, please." And I literally was crying real tears, begging this ship not to leave me. And all I can say is, what changed from me going into that other craft, seeing that disgustingly gross being and those 2 little things? And I'm like, what changed? Why would I be doing this? So nothing made sense. And after standing there for I don't know how long and begging through tears for them to take me, all of a sudden, watching this hovered craft over the railroad tracks, it just went, In the blink of an eye, it went vertical. And I just was like, whoa, when did that happen? How did that happen? I didn't even see that happen. And it happened that fast, almost like thought changed it, and that didn't compute, it just didn't, I couldn't deal with that. And then I started really pleading, please, please, no, don't leave me here. And I said this out loud, why aren't you taking me? Aren't I good enough? And then I said, Teri, shut up. What are you saying? Why would you say such a stupid thing? And then the other side of me was like, take me with you, take me with you. So I was just having this internal battle. And to this day, I still really don't understand that. But then after it was like this, it stayed that way for a while, and I don't know how long, but I remember just pleading with it. And then all of a sudden, I remember saying, this cannot get any crazier. I don't understand what's happening. It just shot up in the air and stopped in the air, and I could see it. And I'm thinking, it's so late at night, but how can I see this so clearly? How am I able to see this? And it just baffled me. And my ears were like on sonic sound. I could see that at the corner of 30th Avenue and 28th Street, there was a light that was going from green, red, yellow, and green. It kept repeating itself. And I could hear it go click, click, click. That was physically impossible. It was way too far away for me to have heard that. And yet, it's like I had the ears of a wolf or something, I could hear everything. And yet I didn't hear crickets. I didn't hear the breeze. I didn't hear dogs barking. I couldn't hear anybody driving anywhere. I wasn't seeing cars. It was just so bizarre. And as I'm listening to the clicking of this, I'm going, what is going on? And all of a sudden, this thing had gone maybe 1,000 feet up in the air and stopped. And out of the belly of this UFO, 42 feet, because I went back and measured it, comes a fireball. And I'm like, what? And it's just, you could hear it crackling. It was true fire. Like in a fireplace when it's burning and crackling, you could hear the crackle of the fire. And I'm like, what the heck? How am I hearing that? What's crackling? Is it wood? What is it? I don't know. What's making the crackle? But it was crackling, and it was vibrating like this the whole time. And it was the exact same size as the belly of this thing. And so now I have a UFO and a fireball. And I'm like, oh my God, this can't get any stranger. What is going on? And I had a brief moment where I thought, don't tell me that thing's going to burn me up or something. I did get a little bit of fear, and the fear immediately went away. I was like, no, I'm okay. I'm safe. And I thought, they're not going to take me. They're not taking me. And then I was kind of thinking, I don't want to go on a fireball. I don't know. None of it made sense. And so as it was doing that, all of a sudden, standing there watching it, they both went towards the Gulf of America, which was then the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm just looking at it like, you got to be kidding me. That thing left so fast. I don't even know if I saw it leave. It went that fast, but I did see it leave. It's just, it was so fast. It was boom, and it just, and they were both gone. And now I'm standing in the middle of the street on the pavement in front of the Civic. And I've got my hands on my head like this going, what just happened? What just happened to me? Oh my God, what the heck was that? Okay, Lord, I got to talk to somebody who knows me. I got to talk to somebody who loves me. I have to talk to somebody now. I can't wait till tomorrow. This is life-shattering stuff here. I can't deal with it. I got back in my car. And I thought, I'm going to go to my mother's. I turned the key and the thing started right up. And I'm like, what? The Civic's working. And I turned it around. My mother lived on 52nd Avenue North. I lived on 32nd Avenue North. And so I was literally 2 minutes from my mother's house. So I drive to my mother's. I get there, I'm banging on the door, and her husband comes to the door and opens it and goes, Teri, what are you doing here so early in the morning? And I thought, morning? Oh, he just got up. I woke him up. I scared him. He thinks it's the morning. It's the middle of the night. He doesn't know the difference. And so I see my mom coming down the hall and she goes, Marty, who's at the door? And he goes, it's Teri. And she goes, well, for God's sake, Marty, let her in. So I ran up to my mother and I said, oh my God, Mom, I have had unbelievable experience. I've got to tell you about it. Put the coffee on. We've got to sit. I've got to tell you about this. And so she said, okay. And she goes, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I mean, this is bizarre. And so my mom sat on the couch. Marty was making the coffee. And I started telling her everything. And I was in the moment. It was all as fresh as it was, that second. And I was trying to get it all out real quick. And she's just sitting there, and now remember, I don't think I mentioned this, but my mother worked at Honeywell. She was an executive there. And my sister also worked at Honeywell. She was a secretary like I was. And, so my mother's a very prim and proper, logical, good person. I mean, she's not a weirdo, not a drunk or a drug addict or any of that stuff. I mean, she's a really solid person. And I know back in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of strange parents, but she wasn't one of them. And very straight-laced. And so here I am telling her all this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to start laughing at me or something any minute, because she's just staring at me as I'm telling her this. And after about, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes of me telling her the whole thing, she puts her hand on my knee like this and she goes, honey, it's okay. I've seen them too. I screamed and I jumped up off the couch and I screamed at her, what? How could you not have prepared me for this? How could you not have told me about this? Why would you have hidden this from me? I said, my God, I'm 27 years old, and in all this time, you couldn't have given me a hint about this crap? I was furious with her. And her husband was like, hey, settle down, girl. And I'm like, well, come on. And then my mom said, because they used to rent their house out for 3 months out of the year. That was the vacation time they had. And they would have some friends up in Canada come down and stay in the house, and they would take their houseboat. They had a beautiful houseboat, and they would live on it for 3 months. And they were both professional divers. And so, my mom says, yes, Teri, when we go out on the, Gulf of America, which was Mexico then, she said we would be out there and these green cylinders would shoot up out of the water and then hover over the water. And she said, this happens so frequently. And so we would watch them. She said they would take off so fast. It was unbelievable. And she said, but I really don't like talking about this. And don't you ever tell anybody I told you that. And I said, okay, Mom, I won't, I won't. And she said, if you ever want to get your job back at Honeywell, she goes, you keep your mouth shut. Now that was 1979. And I never mentioned it again until 2008. My mother was dying of cancer. She was a heavy smoker, lung cancer. And I finally, and it was the most bizarre thing. I'm sitting on the couch at my home in St. Petersburg, and I hear a audible voice say to me, get up, go to the computer, report your sighting. That's all it said. And I'm like, okay. So I got up off the couch. I was looking at a magazine. And I put the magazine down. I went to the computer and I put in, report a UFO. And I reported it. And then I ended up talking to the people that were in charge there. And they kept saying, are you sure you don't remember anything more? And at that time, I didn't remember some of it. And they kept pressing me. And it was because, this had been, 29 years later, and I didn't want to tell the guy on the phone everything. I thought, if this guy knew that I saw this white thing, he would think I was an absolute kookalook. I can't tell him about that. I can't tell him about the things I think I saw, that I felt that I was dealing with. I can't talk to him about being in the craft. I can't talk to him about the tall white. He will hang up on me because I didn't understand anything about what had happened to me. My mother told me to shut up and never say anything again, and I did exactly what my mother told me to do. Now, all these years later, I have come to find out, I went through a regression with Kathleen Marge, a real good friend of mine, and she's just a wonderful soul. Her and Denise Stoner, great people, good friends. They lived in Florida, just a little bit away. Kathleen was like 30 minutes away from me. And so I went over and had her do a regression therapy on me. And through that regression therapy, for the first time, I learned in 2010, that I had missing time, didn't even know there was such a thing, that I had elevation, didn't know that that could happen, that I was experiencing the exact same traumas that other people who have had experiences, the conundrum, the internal struggle, the fear, the whole thing. The tall white, didn't even know it was called a tall white. I just called it a tall white, and that's happened to be the name of the darn thing. And then I didn't know they were grays, but she was sharing with me about them being these little grays, and she educated me. And I was so grateful for Kathleen, because she helped me, Kathleen and Denise helped me understand what had happened to me 29 years earlier. And so then the rest is history. I was on the board with this corporation for 9 years. I've since left it. And I am now the executive director at International UFO Bureau, because going through all the things that I've gone through with extraterrestrials and the interactions I've had with them have taught me so much. And you really can't understand it unless you've been there with them, looking them eyeball to eyeball, and you don't know the level of fear and the level of frustration and the bizarreness of it all until you're there. And so these things are teachers, these experiences teach you. And I found out later on, about maybe 2012, that not only had my mother had experiences, but my older brother, who was a pilot with, the Air Force, he had experiences when he was 9. And I documented all that, got it on tape. He came to some of my meetings that I was holding for ufology. And then my son and I had an experience. So 70 years of experience within my family has taught me so much about what's going on with humanity here once we interact with otherworldly beings. And it is really amazing. They give you data dumps. They give you information that you can go back at the appropriate time it comes to you. It's amazing. And had I not had those experiences, I would have never had the information that's been given to me. So that was one of many interactions that I've had.
And Teri, thank you for sharing your experience with us. You felt like the aliens were ugly and well, I don't know if you used the word disgusting, but you felt
They
like
were disgusting. Oh,
okay.
yes.
Do you
Mhm.
think they truly were ugly, or is it just that you were in their presence and maybe their energy field made you feel that way?
Well, they were completely other than us. And let me just say this. I often hear people say things like, oh, I had sex with an alien or, blah, blah, blah. That is a lie. That is not a truth being told to us because they do not have the wherewithal to have sex with human beings. They can hybrid and do things from a molecular level or cellular level or something like that, but they do not have the wherewithal. They are otherworldly. They were not created in the same image. They don't have the same criteria that we have, DNA. They're very different than we are. And I know this because the Greys were not wearing clothes and the tall white had no clothes on. I was looking at a white form of a very strange skin type, and it really was ugly. But seeing it at that moment was so shocking. I mean, if you haven't ever seen anything like that before, and it's moving, it's alive, it's right there in front of you, and you're being manipulated by it. I mean, it was ugly. And it was nothing like us. And I've often said, let me just share this. I've often said we were created in the image of God, body, soul, and spirit. They weren't. And people say, oh, that's impossible. Really? Does a cat look like you? Does a horse look like you? You look like the fish? We're all created differently, and so are they.
There are a ton of pictures of Greys on the internet, and obviously it's hard to believe if any of them are real. Have you ever seen a picture on the internet and said, that's exactly what I saw?
Yes. Other experiencers have seen these as well. And I have seen some that really do look very similar. They don't have a tall neck. They're short. Their bodies are very tiny. They're not big at all. They're smaller than little children. And they're about 4 feet tall. And I only know this because of looking down at my beige sandals, which I was focused on, my sandals to make sure I had my shoes on so I could run. They came up and all of a sudden they were in my sight, and they were short and their arms were shorter. The tall white had long arms and a thin, tall neck. And he was very tall, really very tall. And just getting close to him, I maxed out and fainted. I'm sure I fainted. My fear level took over and I could not deal with what I was looking at. So I have seen, to answer your question, I have seen a very similar. They're not as ugly as the other one, but I never noticed, like people say they have a mouth and a nose and ears, and I never saw any of that. There's no hair on those bodies. They are really a grayish color and kind of like a moldy, greeny gray, I'm really. And
Do you think it's possible that they are some sort of biological robot?
well, they weren't acting like biological robots. They were acting like walking entities. And he was a walking entity and very much in charge of them and me. And I did not see like the robotic type of body. These things were moving just the way I was moving. And, there was no clicking or popping or humming or anything like that going on. And neither with the tall white. I mean, he was in charge.
Since your mother had already had previous contact, do you think that ship was waiting for you on the tracks?
Yes, I do. I do. And my brother, who was about 10 years older than me, who has since passed, Philip, he saw them from 9 years of age, and he was telling me about what he saw. And they mentally mental telepathy, they spoke to him and they told him to go to a specific place at a specific time, and they would reveal to him. And he did. And it was a park, and a bunch of people in Miami. My brother lived in Miami, and a bunch of people saw that. He grew up to be an Air Force pilot. And he said that he was never allowed to mention anything about what was seen when they were up in the air. Never. And he kept quiet. Even till the day that he died, he kept quiet about it all. These are very real. I do believe that they are biological, not robotic. I believe that these entities are not all demonics. I do believe in demonics. I do believe in hybridization. I do believe just in the extraterrestrials. And because we have those three facets, it can often, with others, I think that they meld it all together. And if there isn't a lot of clarity, if you don't have regression therapy by somebody well trusted, like Kathy was so well trusted, and I didn't have to worry about her leading me or giving me false information. She was just bringing out what I could not handle, because at the time of my experience, it was shocking. And so, I think that, thank God I had somebody worthy. And I also spent some time with Mr. Fowler. He also did some regression therapy with me. And these are very dependable people, looking for truth.
Who do you think the voice was that told you to go report it?
That is such an interesting question. I have wondered, to be sure, was it the Lord or was it an extraterrestrial? It was a male voice. It was very adamant, literally, audibly spoke to me. I could hear it like I can hear your voice. It spoke to me audibly. I was literally sitting on my couch, flipping through a Town and Country magazine, and all of a sudden, go to the computer, report your sighting. And I'm like, that was 29 years ago, and I remembered it instantaneously. That information was given to me. And that's some of the information I was telling you. I now remember that when I was in that craft, the change that happened to me, that it was like a morphing. I went in there fearful and not wanting anything to do with it and being in total disbelief of it all, came out begging them to take me. They had given me a data dump of information, which then, when I needed it, just like I knew when they had said that, when I needed it, it would come to me. And when I heard that voice speak to me, I never even questioned it. I got right up and went right to the computer. In my heart, I'm believing that that was the Lord telling me, because I do believe that God himself wants information to increase. It even says in the scriptures, in the last days, knowledge will increase. Well, knowledge comes from him. So I'm thinking he's in charge of all that. So I just got up and, without questioning, went to my computer and did exactly that. Now, what's even more interesting is that was 2008. And in 2010, because after I reported it and everything, I let it go. I just had literally zero interest in being famous for my, strange, experience. I wasn't one of those looking for attention. I didn't want to be in the Inquirer, I didn't want to be in Fate magazine or whatever was out there at the time. And I didn't even know what was out there at the time. And in 2010, I'm sitting on the same couch. I'm looking at the newest Town and Country magazine. That is a fact. I know it's odd, but it's a fact. The same voice. Go to the computer, revisit your sighting account. And I'm like, okay. I got right up and went back to it. And this time I became an investigator. And then I started working in that field to understand what had happened to me. And as it sits, I was chosen to rewrite all of the criteria that they currently are using at this corporation. And, Mindy and I had met in that platform and started working together. And it was really a divine appointment. There was so much that was wrong with how it was all initially established in this corporation. And so it was like I had the information I needed to upgrade, update, train, teach, change the whole dynamic. And then once I knew that I was done with that segment, the Lord moved me out of that and into something with Mindy, which is the International UFO Bureau, which I was telling you about. She is the CEO and I'm the executive director. And we are getting information about how to change this whole dynamic once again. And we're doing things as teams. We have first responders, we have indigenous peoples, we have groups that are working with us. Every day we get another call from people, different groups that want to be a part of us. And we are illuminating the past as we have always seen it. And we have an amazing vision. Everything is just moving forward, and it's all because of information that has already been given to me and I think many experiencers. And so as all of this comes to fruition and we move forward and we collaborate together, it's just amazing the new conversations and direction we're going in. Because, since we've been around since 1957, Hayden Hughes in the International UFO Bureau. And so for so many years, everybody's been following an old pattern that doesn't work. I mean, nothing new has ever come, in 55 years, nothing new has ever come to the table. But that day is changing. So just wanted to throw that in there. It's just interesting.
Well, what is some of the most profound information that you've unpacked from this download that you received?
Well, to start with, I was perfectly aware of the absolute truth that there are extraterrestrial people, well, let's just say extraterrestrial beings here on the planet. There are absolutely hybridization of other types of beings here with us. I've experienced the reptilians, two different forms of reptilians, and I've experienced other types of beings. And there is no doubt, I don't need anybody to disclose anything. These beings have chosen to disclose to us. And so we're getting this information. I know that they're here with us. They are not involved in our personal lives in any way, shape, or form. They have absolutely no desire to interact with the individuals. They do watch what we do. And by the way, they never listen to what we say. They always watch what we do because the human race cannot be trusted. And that's unknown amongst extraterrestrial beings. We say peace, love, joy, happiness, blah, blah, blah. We say we're Christians, we're godly, we're good. And then we shoot and kill and murder the babies and do all that stuff. And, no, can't be trusted. And they're well aware of it. And so this is one of the many reasons they don't interact with us. However, on a global level, they also know that the wickedness of humanity is trying to wipe each other out because, egos and, everybody's got to be one up in the other guy, and we have to have camps, this camp and that camp. You got to be a Republican, a Democrat, or a liberal, or this or that, or something, I mean, it is absolute nonsense because love is the ultimate, and they understand that. They also were created. They didn't just pop up, they're not pop-up beings. They were created. Their lifespans are different. They live longer, they live differently. And once they die, they literally cease to exist. They're not spiritual beings. We're created in God's image. They're not. So it's a completely different story. And if we could understand more about where they're coming from and who they actually are, we would be able to put this picture together so much easier. We're using rockets with all this fuel going into the atmosphere. They don't have any of that. There's no rockets on the end of their ships, and they can travel through time, space, and be here and then be there almost as thought. And I know that each and every one of those extraterrestrial beings are the ones guiding those ships. It's a mental, it's a different level and realm of understanding. They are nothing like us. We are on an IQ basis here, and so many are under the limit of where the geniuses are. And, even the geniuses struggle here with how it's going. That's why I think Elon Musk is so interesting, because he's looking at things in a different way. And the future will tell. But I still don't even think he's got it right yet, because we're just not using the right propulsion theories. Things are still at the infancy level for humanity. And it's obvious. It's just obvious. Look at their crafts, how they move, how they come, how they go. And there's so many beings that, like, they say, well, we've never found a dead alien. Well, yes, we have, actually. But that's not common knowledge. It is to the UFO community, but not to the world. And that's another issue, secrecy and, lies. And it's just, it's a loaded, game.
What was it like meeting the reptilians, and are they more attractive than the Greys?
Oh gosh, no. The tall one, the one that was in the catacombs that I was taken to by a handler, that thing was so frightening. My whole body was shaking, so much so that my teeth were chattering to the point of biting my tongue, bloodily biting my tongue, because I was shaking like this the whole time. And that was like being in the presence, maybe for anybody that has never seen one, in the presence of a grizzly bear. That's how big they are, how massive they are, how much in charge they are. And they are in charge, and we do have them in captivity. We do have them here, regardless of what our government wants to tell you, they are here. And they are as powerful as dinosaurs. I mean, and that's kind of what I felt like. I was in the presence of a dinosaur type of being, something otherworldly, something different. But they've been here for a very long time. And, it's not new that they just, came in. However, there is a lot of interaction that they have and a lot of power that they have. The captivity thing kind of mind boggles me. He's not really being in captivity. He's there because he's allowing that. There's a reason for that. They haven't captured, you don't capture a dinosaur, okay? He's there of his own free will. And he's there because there's something going on there more, and we're not getting the whole story. We're being lied to, and all this nonsense. And the other was a hybrid of a lizard. And I only know this because the DNA that I was able to capture from the experience when it was sent to the lab showed the DNA of two things on my swab, my DNA and his DNA. And again, let me say his. They've all had male voices. I find that very interesting. You hear about all these, they've seen these voluptuous, women with a, no, you have not, okay? You're looking for your 5 minutes of fame. Shame on you for lying, but that is not a fact. They're not made like us. Now, Nordics, that could be a completely different thing. But I'm still not thinking. I mean, I am just disgusted when I see how some of these people in ufology in the past have made it into a revolution of these hot, women from Venus. Okay, shame on you people. But anyway, back to the question, this shorter reptilian actually had the DNA of a Mariana South American lizard. And on my swab was his DNA. How'd that get there? Okay. And pond water. How did that get there? When this experience happened while I was laying in my bed, and I was actually healed by this experience. And this is what I wrote the book about. Now, I've pulled the book down because there's so much new information that I'm rewriting the book to add all of the different dimensions of what has come to my understanding through it all. And, that's another thing. I hate it when people say, they changed their story. No, more information was given to you, and now you see things with a different eye. You're able to understand what happened. And that doesn't just happen overnight. Look at Travis Walton. He had no clue that through his foolishness, he ran into that beam. They killed him, but they picked him up and took him. They healed him and brought him back. Now, Hollywood showed that, he was naked and blah, 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 blah. All lies, lies. Shame on those people for doing that to ufology and making it such a giggle factor and such a joke. The truth was they healed him and brought him back. I was healed right there in my home. And thank God for Kathy Martin and Denise Stoner. And I was able to get a swab because, again, when you go through these things, you are not in the right place and you're thinking, you're in a shock mode. You're not able to think properly after experiencing these unbelievable interactions with these non-human beings. It's mind-blowing. And it will change your life, period. And, being a very strong Christian, and I am a very strong Christian, I believe in God, and, all else can pay cash, okay? But, I'm not easily misled about these things, because I pray about everything, and I'm always looking, God, what are you trying to say through this? And I do believe that he is allowing many of us that have had these experiences to bring this understanding to the masses and keep people informed on what is happening. We do get data dumps. Those data dumps are to put others at ease, to know, we don't have to be afraid of them. Like so many people say, are they a threat? No, if they were a threat, we would have long ago been annihilated. They do have the understanding. They are so much smarter than we are. They're coming from a place of understanding. And they've been here for eons, not just a few years.
Well, what is their agenda, in your opinion?
I really believe their agenda is to enlighten those of us who will be enlightened, who will understand what they're doing. And they're not here to change anything. They're not here to change our history or anything like that. They're simply here to educate us on the fact that they have been here for eons. I believe in a pre-Adamic race before Adam and Eve. I believe that they have been here. And there was a time of the dinosaur. There was a time of all of these things. Etched on our walls in all the different places around the world are what people saw. That's why they etched it, and they didn't have a pen and paper, so they had to etch it in the stones. And so this is a telling story. The sands of time have clearly covered all of these things. And I literally mean the sands of time, because archaeologists have had to dig to get this stuff, right? And we're getting it now. You were sharing with me just before we came on how they're finding all this stuff. Well, like the Bible said, in the last days, knowledge will increase. Knowledge comes from God, nowhere else, and so he is bringing all of this together for us to come to an understanding about what's been happening on the world we call home, what we're living on here. It's also known in the Bible as the land of the living. We're alive here. We're in charge. The spirits aren't in charge, but the spirits are there. The demons are not in charge, but the demons are here. They're just fallen angels. And, the Lord was telling me the other day, I said to him, it says in the scriptures that Satan and his angels and all these people, humans like me and you, who are disobedient and don't obey, are going to be thrown into the lake of eternal fire. And I said, why is it an eternal fire? I mean, after all, why does it have to be eternal? Why don't they just burn up and die? Well, because you and I are made like angelics. They are a spirit being, and spirits don't die. We have a spirit within us, and we're spiritual beings, literally on this human journey together, all walking each other home, by the way. And when we die, we don't die. Just the carcass comes off. But the spirit that's within the carcass, keeping the carcass alive at the moment, thank you, God. Once we put that down, we go on. We don't die, because once a spirit is created, it lives eternally. That's why it's an eternal lake of fire, and it's an eternity in hell and an eternity in heaven. And I'm like, whoa, I mean, this is a no-brainer. Why can't people just see that? Why is this so hard? Why do we make it so hard? And I really think the extraterrestrials look at us like, man, you guys have it right there in a book, and and you can't even listen. You won't even pay attention, because we're all so busy being egotistical brats, and staying in an immature level of understanding.
Did these encounters with these beings change your faith in any way?
Only to increase it. I can honestly say that knowing that they know him, and knowing that they are also created beings and spirits that will live eternally, except I know that I'm talking about the spiritual realm. The extraterrestrial realm is a different realm. They're not created as spiritual beings. They are not spiritual beings. They do die, but their lifespans are in the thousands of years. They don't live like we do. They don't eat like we do. They don't reproduce like we do. They're created beings. And so they do have knowledge, and they can do things with hybridization. And I believe with all my heart and soul, that is what they're looking for. They are not created like we are. We are that spiritual being. They want that. They want to live forever. That's the only reason they're here. Nobody might buy that, and I don't care. What they show me is my truth and understanding, and that's what I That's who I am. I have to walk in what I know. I'm responsible for what I know, not what everybody else knows. I believe they're here because they want to create that spirit, which is why they keep on watching us and dealing with us and watching us for generations, like my family for 70 years, and I don't even know if my great grandparents and, if they were all involved in all of this too. I don't know, because they died before anybody could have a conversation with them about anything. So I don't know how far back it all goes, but I do believe that their hybridization process is to create an extraterrestrial that they get that spiritual component from us. That comes from our DNA because we were created in the image of God. And the angels were created with that same spirit. So we have that in common with the angels, which is why in the book of Genesis, we have the Nephilim. I don't know if you know about the Nephilim, but they were the fallen angels. They were the watchers. They had with the women, and the women had the giants. And we have giants still with us, I won't get into all that.
A couple of my guests talked about how there are caves underground with ETs there, lots and lots of ETs that would replace us. Do you know anything about that?
I don't believe that they're there to replace us. I do believe that they are there because I was taken into the catacombs deep down in, which was very dark, dreary, smelly, cold. And I'd never been to a catacomb in my life, but I was taken there spiritually in this experience that I had. And I had a point I wanted to make about that too. In the Bible, it says that the Lord put spirits down into the caves and the caverns within the earth that'll be held there for a time until he's ready to release them in the end times. And they say once the Nile and the Euphrates dry up, these spirits will come back out, and they are the same spirit. Remember, spirits don't die. So that same fallen spirit is still here. He is the exact same spirit that fell from heaven eons ago. And that shows us who we are. We came here for a purpose. We wanted to come here. That's why we are all going back home. This is not our home. This is the earth. This is like a cocoon, if you will, and we're learning. And God puts us here to train us up. Some of us are going in that direction, and some of us are going in this direction. And the choice, because you're a free will spirit, is yours. Now, these things that are down in the catacombs that are underneath, they will also be let go. They'll also come out at some point. And that's all written in the book of Revelation. I mean, it's amazing how the Bible answers all these UFO questions, and it clarifies with absolute truth because this is prophetic. It's not just something somebody made up. These books have been here. I mean, the Apocrypha, and all the different books like Jasher, Jubilees, Maccabees, all these different books that were taken out of the canons. There were like 189, and then the Catholics dumbed it down to 66 books. But there was all these other books with all this other deep knowledge. Enoch. Oh my goodness. Once you start reading these things and you start understanding what God is actually doing here on the earth, it's like, wow, it's a mind blow. It is an unbelievable mind blow. And it all makes sense. And those of us who are studying, that's why the Bible says, ask, seek, and knock, and study, study to show thyself approved. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Study what? And so I started studying the scriptures, and that was about 55 years ago. And so, I'm still studying today. I'm no expert at anything. I don't even believe we have experts here on the planet. But I think that we all bring something to the table, and collectively we have answers. we have understanding. And God does speak to people very prophetically. Like I look at Jonathan Cahn and all the things he's written and the things God has given him, which I totally missed, but he got those. And that is amazing. It's amazing what comes out of scripture. And the Jewish rabbis that are messianics now that accept Yeshua as their savior, oh my goodness, what they're bringing out of the scriptures from years of study of the Jewish, and Adam and Eve were the first Jews. They were the lineage created for Jesus. He came out of that lineage, but there was a lineage before that of humans. And there was also beings and all these things that are down in the catacombs and that are under the waters that are going to be released. It's an amazing story.
Do you think that we are in the end times?
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for it because we're living in Bible times again. And it's so exciting to see it all come to pass. It's all coming to fruition. It's making sense for the first time in all the generations of living. We have not just the prophecy. I mean, because all those other generations were coming through it and things hadn't been fulfilled and they didn't understand. The only ones that understood were the ones that were taken, like Enoch, Elijah, and Moses, and different ones that got information from God. And he is the only source of knowledge, which I said earlier. That's where it's going to come from. And it doesn't matter if people believe it or not. That is not going to change the fact that it is so. And, they never could see all these things come to fruition. But we, in this generation now, have seen all these things come to fruition. And what's crazy to me is that it's all centered around Jerusalem. It's all going back to Jerusalem, which is where God said it was going to happen. And, he's just let us live all these eons together. And I love that it's finally making sense. We're the humans who are experiencing the common sense. We've watched all the nonsense and where people can go when they're led astray. And now we're coming back into common sense. This is all making sense. The picture is coming together and few pieces are left to put into that puzzle. And there are still some. So we are in the last days. We're not leaving, tomorrow or anything, this I can assure you. But I don't see 10 years in front of us. I don't. And for some reason, that's another thing that I got like, it was not a data dump, but it was just knowledge embedded within me that when I was 27 years old, I remember somebody saying, well, what do you see down the road? And I said, well, I see 2017, 2018, 2019. And I kept saying, I see these years unfolding, which meant I was still alive. And I thought that was crazy too, because I always believed I would be alive and I would live this. I'm in my 70s and I'm getting up there. So, I keep thinking to myself, this is crazy. I'm still alive. God keeps keeping me here. And I know why I'm here. He told me that I was chosen to be a voice in all of this. And because he's always had voices in every generation, he's had voices, some of them are massive, big. I'm not massive, big voice. I'm just a little peon voice here, but I am a voice. And I'm very dedicated to that. And I know that's why I've got breath in my nostrils today. And I'm happy to go home when he takes me. I'm not saying I do it because I want to be here. As you well know, I was ready to go back in 1979. I was ready to get out of here. But he kept me here for a few more years.
Earlier, you mentioned that the interactions with them have taught you so much.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of what you were taught?
Yes, it's all been leading me forward. And it has changed my mind and opened my mind. Remember, I've always been a very strong Christian, and most Christians start out knowing God, but not ever really knowing God. You know, they go to church and they're well disciplined and they're pew sitters and all that, and they pay their tithes and all that, but their lives never change. Nothing ever changes. You know, they'll still run you over in the parking lot at the church if you try to take their parking space, you know. And I mean, that kind of thing really still happens all the time. The difference is, as I was having all of these interactions, many different facets of understanding were opening to me. And again, let me just say, you've got to be willing to be open and trust God to move you forward in all of these things, because knowledge comes from God. And so they have information that you and I don't have because they are other than us and they live in a different realm of reality. And I know people say, well, you know, nothing is reality, but that is not so. This life was set up as a place of reality to grow. And we limit our growth by cutting off different realms of understanding. We've got to stay open. And yet our hearts have to be before God, very pure. I don't know anybody that I'm working with that's an egotistical person that wants all of the attention to be on them. But this is what we've seen for years. And working with the extraterrestrial realm, the spiritual realm, the angelic realm, and really the paranormal realm has helped me to hear and see and gain knowledge about how they work and how it works together. They're not separate from one another. We're all connected in this. We're here in the land of the living on an earth planet here. I don't know if it's round or flat, and I don't care. Okay. You know, what I do know is, I think it's round, but what I'm thinking is that while we're here, we've got to be available to all these different avenues for wisdom. But our basic wisdom is going to come out of our what we understand about biblical knowledge, because that is his story. And this is about him. And where we go from here is back to him. But all of these things can and do happen while we're here. So if you're close to the spiritual realm, then you're not going to understand that. And when we move from this body to the next life, we need that understanding, because spiritual beings never die. We need to understand what can happen and how it can happen. And this is why the data dumps we get help us to articulate this knowledge within us and then move forward. So, you know, I was very closed-minded. Like I told you in my experience, when I saw that craft, what was the first thing I said? No way. How can that be? I had to remain open and let that knowledge about this being a reality and this being truth, I needed to be able to stay open. And I asked the Lord, how can this be? Nothing can happen to me that you don't allow. And what did he say to me? There's so much you don't understand. That's a data dump, okay? That is getting information coming to me audibly that I needed to. Now, if I would have closed up and said, oh, no, you know, I wouldn't be who I am today. I'd be a narrow-minded person that does not understand what's happening here. And we all want to understand why we're here. Why did we come here? What decisions did we make to come here? Because trust me when I tell you, you made a decision to come here. It was part of you wanting to come to the earth and being a part of this realm. People don't even understand that. There are Christian preachers that don't understand that. And I've seen lives lived in a bubble in each area, you know, People don't want to get out of that nice little comfortable bubble because it sometimes means pain, sometimes scary, sometimes, it goes against the grain, and it even goes against your own heart sometimes. But if you bring everything back to the Lord, he's going to walk you through it all. Now, when I was about 10, I was a little girl. And of course, my spiritual experiences started when I was 5. But this happened when I was about 10. I had a vision. And in the vision, I was this little girl. And there was a path in front of me. And it was dark. And I saw all these things on the side, like rooms, like gated areas, which would be more accurate, gated areas. And I was told to walk down that path, and that was the path of life. I didn't know it at the time, but I was told to start walking. And as I started walking, things were coming out at me and jumping out, but they had a boundary. They could not touch me. They had a boundary, and I could turn and look at them, or I could turn and look at them, or I could go straight ahead. Fear, anxiety, stress, all kinds of things were dashing out at me, but there was a boundary. I was protected. And that vision has stuck with me all throughout my life. And I have now seen one of those visions showed me the reptilian. I was a 10-year-old. I thought it was a monster. I couldn't understand what I was seeing then. But now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have thwarted my growth right at that point by not believing, not receiving, not allowing myself to understand what just happened to me. This is why I study. This is why I search. I read my Bible every day. I read Enoch. I read, the Book of the Giants. I read all these different books that are not in the canon to educate myself. And you will not believe what you will find out in those books. It is all about the extraterrestrial realm and the things that are so bizarre, you can barely wrap your mind around them. And the things that are before the throne of God, wheels within wheels with millions of eyes. Yeah.
Teri, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Of course.
What's the best way to contact you?
It would be my name, Teri Lynge Kehl at yahoo.com. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. I changed it. Teri Lynge Kehl at outlook.com. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Do you have anything?
Yeah, when you get in your 70s, you forget a thing or two.
You're allowed to. Is there anything that you got going on that you want people to know about?
Well, I would love for people to check us out on the www.internationalUFObureau.com. This is where we're going to start talking about all of the different things that we're getting. And we are a collaborative effort with other teams of people. And I would invite you, Jeff, to be a part of us and to put your information on our webpage, because we believe that it's going to take a village to figure this out, if you know what I mean. This isn't just going to be one person getting all the answers. We are a group of like-minded, high-minded, open-minded individuals who are all working together. We're working with first responders, like I said, the initiatives, and we're working with indigenous peoples. We're working with everybody. We're working with other podcasters, other people that are very knowledgeable about what's going on right now in 2025. We're not looking back to 1979 anymore. Okay, those were experiences over years where things were happening. We're looking forward. And I think that We're doing a rigorous data collection of information, and it is solid. We don't want the woo-woo and the nonsense. We're looking for actual, proof about what's happening right now and what's being revealed to us right now. And it is mind-blowing beautiful. It is so, it's just so wonderful to know that we can get information that is truth and not just, these goofs that have been out there for years, just goofy stories that should be in the Inquirer, we're looking for facts. So I'd love you to join us.
Teri, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Sure. This is all positive. But, the positive thing is don't be afraid. Don't live in fear. Live with the curiosity of a child. Live with open eyes and an open heart. And always be willing to work with others who are willing to work with you, and come together in a spirit of love and understanding, and be there for each other. Really, seriously, this is what this whole life is about. Love. Love wins.
Teri, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.